Hey guys, Raf here from the End Game Investor. It's been a while since I put out a video that was an interview. Haven't had much opportunity to do that here, and I'm not at home, but I have found a nice little topic to be discussing today, and that is Lebanon. Another instance of hyperinflation that is going on right before our eyes, so we can extrapolate what is going to happen in the end game based on what is happening in Lebanon right now. Well, I was watching a food blog because I'm a foodie, and though I can't eat much of the stuff that is talked about on these blogs, there is one show that I like particularly, and that is the Best Ever Food Review Show, and he was talking about Lebanon.
As many of you may know already, Lebanon underwent an economic crisis in 2020. This greatly affected prices throughout the country. I already learned on my main channel that some food, certain breads that used to sell for about $1 years back, are now selling for just a penny.
Now, why would the prices of bread fall by 100 times?
1,000,000 times.
Is it some kind of conspiracy by the bread bakers of Lebanon to corner the market and to outpace their competitors by cutting prices to almost nothing so they can sell some bread? Is it a plot to take over the world and have a one world bread baking government or whatever? Well, no. If you think about it, the argument that price gougers or supermarkets get greedy during times of inflation, and that's what causes price increases, that's about as stupid as an argument as saying that the bread bakers in Lebanon have a conspiracy to control the bread market by cutting prices by 100 times in order to enrich themselves on pennies instead of dollars. This is all dumb.
They're so stupid! Stupid!
Really, the price of bread is falling in hyperinflation. The price of everything in hyperinflation falls precipitously in terms of actual money. So it is not the price of anything falling or rising. It is the price of money increasing by orders of magnitude to get that monetary commodity back into the economy as fast as possible and head off a zombie apocalypse where you can do nothing but eat brains.
I'm about to order the brains. You can see it in this dish. Just like 8 odd brains hanging out. Okay, here we go. He takes the brain, he puts it in a long bread hoagie. He breaks up the brain. Oh, that's a lot of brain for one sandwich.
What happens in hyperinflation is that the gold substitute, the local gold substitute or gold substitute or whatever derivative of gold that it is on whatever level, that loses all of its value, and suddenly the money commodity is the commodity that is most scarce. So you can either go back to gold directly, but that almost never happens if there is a viable gold substitute that still exists, because using a gold substitute is generally much more convenient than using gold itself, which is why gold substitutes still exist. And so in the case of Lebanon, that gold substitute is the dollar. So what happens is that there is a massive wealth transfer from Lebanese people that only hold Lebanese pounds or whatever the currency is in Lebanon, and there is a transfer from them to holders of dollars, which is still a viable gold substitute in Lebanon. And so in local currency terms, bread prices keep rising and rising and rising, but anyone who holds dollars can buy whole truckloads of bread for almost nothing.
Nothing!
Same thing with food in general.
Today we set out to spend $100 on street food. I thought it might be impossible, but it turned out, after adding up everything, that yes, it was impossible. We didn't do it.
So if we extrapolate that out to what is happening, or what will happen in the end game, when the dollar does collapse, everyone who holds that gold substitute will lose all of their purchasing power, but the purchasing power will not disappear because food still exists and food production methods still exist, and all the capital that creates food today still exists. The only thing that doesn't exist is a way for that food to be distributed. Famines are not caused by a sudden shortage of food, a shortage in the sense that food no longer exists. You can't produce enough food to support all those people. Food shortages exist in a hyperinflation only in the economic sense, in that there is no way to effectively distribute food among money holders because the money substitute has died. So the famine is caused by a lack of distribution method, not an actual physical shortage where there is no supply available anywhere. It just cannot be distributed. The role of the monetary commodity is to distribute what resources are available among the people that have the monetary commodity in order to divide labor. So the shallow statement that in a hyperinflationary environment, what you need first is food and water is not true. What you need first and foremost in a hyperinflationary environment is the money commodity, because it is that commodity that is in the highest shortage, which is expressed in the fall of the price of food in money commodity terms, or the nearest substitute to that commodity, which in Lebanon's case is the dollar. If you think about it a little bit deeper, those who say in a hyperinflation what you need the most is food and water and basic survival commodities, it is very wrong analysis. It's a very shallow analysis that is completely false. Because if you think about it, why don't I go to my neighbor with a baseball bat, beat him over the head, eat his brain, take all of his stuff? The reason I don't do that is because I have money and I'd rather purchase and trade instead of beat people to death and eat their brains. And if you want to say that the reason I don't bash my neighbor over the head with a baseball bat and eat his brain is because the police might come and arrest me, well, how do the police come and arrest me? They get paid money by the state. That works. And so they do their job. Therefore, I don't beat people over the head with baseball bats and eat their brains because I have money too and I want to trade. It all comes down to people have money, which is why they are civilized. They have a way to trade. That's the only reason. Without money, there is no trade, and people live all for themselves, and society breaks down and bad things happen. So in a hyperinflationary environment, the first thing you need is money. Yes, a stock of food and water can help you for a while and keep you from the breadlines in the initial stages of hyperinflation, which is why I would advise, or it's not advice, I myself do stock some extra food and some extra water, but that is not the first thing that you need in hyperinflation. The first thing you need is money. In a case where there is no money, then society does break down because there is no way for people to trade efficiently. And so, if they're on the verge of starvation, they will go to their neighbor's house, beat him over the head with a baseball bat or a gun or whatever it is, which means what really is the cure for the zombie apocalypse? Is it for everyone to hoard food and water? No, because food and water hoarded eventually runs out. What you need to hoard is money so that you can continue the division of labor and distribute food among the population so that nobody starves to death and nobody becomes part of the zombie apocalypse. The cure for the zombie apocalypse is the money commodity, not food and water directly. Let's go into what is happening in Lebanon, into the numbers, and why it is happening, and what Lebanon can do next to save itself from a zombie apocalypse, which appears to already be taking place. Here's an article from the AP Associated Press. I don't know what it's associated with. I think it's the New World Order or whatever it is. Or maybe they're associated with the IMF, the International Mother somethings. Title says, IMF warns without reforms, Lebanon could see hyperinflation. Ernesto Ramirez Rigo, he is the head of the IMF mission, it says here, visiting Lebanon, said at a news conference Thursday at the end of their 9-day visit that continued inaction by Lebanese leaders would lead the nation to a never-ending crisis.
The mirror of your the answer to a never-ending story.
In which it could spiral into hyperinflation, affecting the quality of life of many Lebanese for years to come. Well, hyperinflation is not never-ending. Hyperinflation is the end of a crisis in which people go to a different currency or to money itself. In the case of the crashing Lebanese currency, that would be the dollar as the next substitute. In the case of a crashing dollar, that will have to be gold. There is no other choice. Finally, it says the IMF visit came as progress towards finalizing the sorely needed IMF bailout package for the struggling country has largely stalled. Well, that's pretty good thing. The IMF is really there not to enrich the people of Lebanon. They're there to shake them down. They're there to give them an emergency loan of their stupid currencies so that Lebanon can be maintained in the orbit of the international mother people and continue to be slaves to them. So I call on Lebanon, don't take the IMF money. Go back to gold. You've got some, use gold and silver and stay out of the IMF's orbit. Let's go and look into what is causing the hyperinflation, what is happening in the monetary sphere in Lebanon. These charts are hilarious. So this is the Lebanese pound and the pound dollar exchange rate. So this is another piece of evidence that that pegs don't work, right? Pegs are just artificial. As you know, the dollar was pegged to gold. It's at $35 now. It's 9.71. When that peg was broken, it's all this pegs are lies. They don't work. So we see here that the Lebanese pound was 1,500 per US dollar until February 2023, when the peg could no longer be maintained, and all of a sudden the Lebanese pound dollar exchange rate jumps from 1,500 to 15,000. 10 to 1, and here's a new peg at 15,000. Is that going to hold? No, it's not. It's going to continue to deteriorate. But if we move to the next chart, what we see in 2020, it was pretty much at a zero inflation rate thanks to the dollar pound peg, which worked for it looks like maybe 12, 13 years or so until 2020 when things started to get out of control. Now you have this wobbling thing that is losing its integrity, and we're at about 250% inflation. Well, at 250% inflation, so prices more than tripling every year. How are Lebanese stocks doing? Well, 250%. Well, in 20, let's zoom this out. In 2020, the Lebanese stock market was about 617, or six. Let's just say 600. 2020 when the crisis started, and now we're at about 1,800. So it's about 3 times. Inflation rate of 250% versus stock appreciation of 200%. People are still losing money, even if they're invested heavily in the Lebanese stock market. These assets are not helping keep up with food prices. People are losing purchasing power, even if they're fully invested in stocks. It's the same story in all hyperinflations, but let's move on to Lebanese money supply. So in 2020, saw that the Lebanese money supply was 60,000 whatever, or 60,000 billion. All these numbers are just a bunch of zeros. So 60,000 billion in 2020 at the low here, and now we're at 120,000 billion. So the money supply has doubled since the hyperinflation started. There's a lot of ways to fight inflation. Inflating is not one of them, though it really is the only choice, because if you're in an inflationary system, you can't really stop until the entire banking system has collapsed. There's no way out of it. But let's go to this final and I think funniest chart of all. It doesn't look like much, but look at the numbers here, and then we'll zoom out and you'll get it. So I'm just going to eyeball this. So we had January 2023, the Lebanese central bank balance sheet was at, let's say, 200,000 billion whatever pounds, and then February 2023 we're suddenly at 160,000 billion. So that's a rise of 8 times instantaneously. Now, if we look at this from a wider chart, we can see here this is ridiculous. I don't even know what these numbers are. But yeah, the balance sheet started to gently rise, relatively gently, and then all of a sudden, bam, we pull a Canada here, and the Lebanese central bank balance sheet, in the midst of hyperinflation, has increased by a factor of 8 overnight. Now the IMF is coming in, trying to swoop down and suck their blood, and it's not really nice. They got to stay away from the IMF and go back to gold and silver, and that way they can enrich their populations again, and encourage their populations to acquire real money, start stacking. Please, Lebanon, you're a beautiful country, and even though I'm not allowed to really go there as an Israeli, I really do hope that we can be allies once again, as we were in First Temple times. Let's not forget that. It's the Israeli government that's your enemy. You've got nothing to do with it. Good luck, guys up there, and take this opportunity of hyperinflation and embrace it and move to sound money. You can be a great country once again. This is Ralph of the Endgame Investor. If you enjoyed this little analysis, then sign up for a 2-week free trial of the Endgame Investor before the Endgame of Lebanon becomes the Endgame of the whole world, and that is coming, and it's going to come soon, it's going to come quickly, it's going to come as fast as the Lebanese Central Bank ballooned their balance sheet by a factor of 8 in a day. And if you want to become my patron on Patreon, where I discuss the biblical angle on these things, such as Lebanon and Israel actually being allies back in the time of King David, which I hope can come once again, and we can rebuild the temple together, just as King Hiram of Lebanon helped supply the wood for the first temple. Let's get back together, let's discuss these things, and say hi to Nasrallah for me here. Some.
A lot of brains in there. It's probably one of my favorite brain dishes ever in my life. Brain sandwich here in Lebanon, a must try.